Pixelation is really important to today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, but not because we are going to be talking about how to fix that really blurry image that you're looking at thinking, how do I make this image less blurry than it is? You can check out whatever photo editing software you're using, search their website, because I know I'm looking at one in particular right now that's a pretty popular one, and there's a really good page on fixing pixelated images. So if you use a really big one that I don't use because I use different products, which I'm not also going to endorse since I am not being paid by either of these companies, then definitely look on their website or just type it into Google, fix pixelated image. You'll get your help. There's only so much you can do, but it could look a lot better. Oh, and nowadays AI is helping with that. But what is AI's greatest strength is also AI's greatest weakness, because it's the pixels in that picture that lead to the most insane AI generated images. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet, only on YouTube. If you've been enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you have a Brave browser, as I do, you can donate basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. First, let me get this out of the way. There are two types of pixelation. One is spelled with an I, Pixil, Ation, and the other one is an E, Pixel, Ation. And the first one is an old word and has to do with being bewitched by pixies, and also it can mean to be drunk. But that's an old word. No one really, or rare, I haven't ever seen that word used in my life, but I'm sure it has been used in the past and maybe in the present. Maybe if you have a blog or if you're writing about something and you feel like you need to talk about being driven insane because you were bewitched by pixies in the forest, then use pixelated and pixelation and go for it. But if you're in the 99% of people who are not bewitched by pixies, then pixelation to you, again, comes back to that picture that you're looking at, that you're like, this is so blurry. How do I sharpen it? So what do we mean when we're talking about pixels there? That pixelation has a more recent history. Turns out that the first recorded use of it is from 1965, although it seems to have been in currency a little bit before that time among people who were working on, graphics processing. And there was a chance that pixels could have been called PELS, P-E-L-S, because IBM and AT&T both preferred calling pixels PELS. And pixels and PELS are abbreviations for the phrase picture elements, because these were, and still are, basically blank spaces that can be told to appear in a certain color. And that's, I think, a pretty simple explanation. The real explanation behind pixels is much more complex, but let's just leave it at that. Now, there are two types of ways of representing images on a graphic display. The two main types. One type is the pixel, and that is basically what we use every day when we use graphic displays. That's what we're really looking at is pixels, and those pixels are made to do things that produce the images that we see. And those images, like a photograph, a digital photograph, are images that are called raster images. And raster is from a Latin word, rastrum, which means rake because of the way that the images scan. That's just, well, we'll leave it there. But nonetheless, the raster image, and you may have heard this term before, that when an image is rasterized, rastered, whatever you want to call it, that means that it is rendered into these pixels. Now, there is another way, which if you've worked at all with any of the graphic design programs or any photo editing programs, you know that there is another type of way of, in the case of modern computing, basically a way of displaying images, and that is called a vector image. And the thing about the vector image, that type of image, is based not on these little pixels that are put together to form an image, or programmed to do different colors and so forth, and therefore form an image, and brightnesses. This is using basically what are called Cartesian coordinates. So if you remember back to high school math, or if you're in high school, you're probably doing this right now, and you have X and Y axis, and you can plot shapes on that, and you can create circles, and you can create all sorts of shapes, right, by kind of connecting the dots, etc. That kind of image, a vector image, can be scaled to be as big or as small as you like it, because the shapes are always going to be the same shapes, because they're based on their shape, not on the fact that they're a space filled in with pixels of different colors, brightnesses, etc. So a line that's a vector is never going to look blurry or pixelated, because it isn't being formed on the pixel principle. That's hard to say. And I'm saying pixel principle because all displays display using this pixel principle. We don't use displays that use a vector model. Those types of displays are described as calligraphic because they're like, calligraphy, where it's very smooth lines, etc. And that's because there were old ways of producing this with these kinds of basically pens that were operated by machines to draw things. And that is a vector image because it's not based on single kind of points being manipulated. It's a smooth connected plot. And so that drawing looks smooth, and it's not like, it's not like you can't see the little dots if you look way down. If you magnified it, you wouldn't see dots because that's not how the image isn't formed by manipulating pixels. It's formed by a different method. But no displays that are commonly used today use this principle of creating images. There are ones that used to be like that, and those were, say, radar displays long ago. Those, you might have seen them in old movies where it's a circle with a green thing going around and it's forming it, and it's right, kind of refreshing the image and so forth. Those were really vector images. Those weren't created by pixels. So today, we really our screens are really following the pixel principle, pixel process. And this is really why AI images can be so messed up, because the way that the AI image generators work is that they basically study a whole lot of images, and they can't actually tell what the thing is in the images. They're simply able to say, this is what the arrangement of all of these pixels is, et cetera, that information. And they also know from the metadata what that image is supposed to be an image of. but they can't actually tell what that kind of thing actually looks like really or how it really works. All they know is that there's a certain array of pixels that looks that way when there's a connection to the thing that it's supposed to be a picture of, which means that when you ask for it to reproduce something like famously like a hand, AI doesn't often know what to do and may produce a hand that doesn't look like, or looks like a mangled hand, or a hand with 7 fingers, or a hand with really weird skin. The most advanced AI will have maybe 5 fingers and will maybe know something about how a hand operates from seeing many, many pictures of hands in different poses. But you'll notice that the skin texture will look extremely weird because the AI doesn't quite know what the anatomical look of a hand should be, ought to be. Something that we can easily tell as humans, but something that AI absolutely cannot tell, or has a very difficult time telling, and doesn't know how to replicate that. That's the same thing is true for letters. This is why when it sees images of, if you say, you can try this on your favorite AI image generator, type in something like, give me a image of Life's Potluck Buffet. And believe me, I've done this. And what you'll see is that sometimes it'll spell the words right, but a lot of times, as soon as you start, going through the images that it produces, the words will be spelled in wild ways. Like you couldn't tell you could tell that it maybe is supposed to say it, but sometimes you can't even tell what it's meant to say because it can't read images either. It can't read them in the way that you or I read a book. It only can tell that there are certain pixels formed in certain ways, and those create these shapes, and a G and a C might be as good as the same thing, or an I and an L, or anything. It doesn't really matter. It just knows that there's like these kinds of shapes that go on that are these lettery shapes, and they need to be there. And sometimes that results in just the wildest images that have nothing to do with what you asked for. And that's the same, and it's the same reason why. It's also why if you type in for a drawing of a pixie, you will get a picture of a type of haircut, because that is the thing that it most often sees when the word pixie is typed into a search engine, is a pixie cut, which is a specific type of haircut. And the interesting thing about that is that it can't quite understand what the elements of a pixie cut truly are, because again, AI is just looking at those pixels and kind of has to just produce whatever it has been trained to produce. So that's the reason why pixels are the greatest strength of artificial intelligence, but also its greatest weakness. Let's ask the cards for some card intelligence, some CI about our work and lives. So here we go. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards, tell us some things. All right, here we go. It's card 30. Use righteous anger to find your mission. It's hard to get righteously angry about something you do not care deeply about. This kind of anger is often a marker of something you need to do. Think about a situation where you were righteously indignant about something. What was going on? Consider the context, the location, the words and actions of others, and of yourself. Now, consider what in this is actually a mission you are on and what you need to do about it. Well, that's a great one for today. And I know I have been righteously angry when there have been images that have been produced by AI that are just so messed up. So maybe there's something I need to do about that. I'll have to think about it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow on another episode of Life's Potluck Buffet.